Austin. This is a neat opportunity provided by Porsche to drive the 718 Cayman S. And I don't normally do this, but this is Frank Weismann, and he's with Porsche. But I don't normally like to have the PR people with me. However, Frank is a proper enthusiast, used to be a journalist at Auto Bild und Sport in Germany.
Sports
cars in Germany. So he's done like high-speed testing and like all the crazy stuff that those Euro mags get to do. And so he's got like so much product knowledge and stuff that I figured might be helpful. Plus, you're here, and it's so hot, I don't want to leave you on the side of the road.
That's kind of nice.
So, the 718 Cayman S, we did the Boxster S in Portugal with PDK. This one has a manual. I wanted to see how that was. It's actually a new 6-speed gearbox with a different clutch, a different flywheel, and it's actually stronger to hold the 350 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque that the 718S makes. Structurally, basically the same as the Boxster, just has a hard roof.
Right.
And now the Cayman is cheaper than the Boxster, which is in line with the other coupe convertible deals. Still sounds kind of like a Subaru at idle. No comment from Frank. But, you know, as I said in the Boxster video, when you start to wind it out, it does sound advanced and like there's a lot of smart engineering going on. So let's have a go with this thing. I think it sounds kind of cool and grumbly. I think it sounds nice. So, this car is about 3,000 pounds as tested, give or take 50. This one has PASM, it's got sport suspension, sport exhaust, which is enabled. The manual has rev matching, auto rev matching, which you can turn off, and the problem is you can't put it in sport and have it turned off. That's the downside, but it is there. Feel free to contribute to this, Frank. You don't have to be silent.
Yeah, well, it's, I think what you're noticing on this great road that you knew even before I did,
Lime Creek Road,
is just the balance of the car.
What's cool about the Boxster and the Cayman is, and especially because I've spent a lot of time in the Focus RS hot hatch, it's like this is a platform designed to do this from the ground up. It's not like taking a Mustang and turning it into a Shelby, or taking a Focus and turning it into an RS. When you design something ground up, you've got that really low center of gravity. You've got the really advanced suspension geometries, which you referred to as a semi-double wishbone, and I'm not entirely sure what that means.
It's like a split wishbone setup, but it's a McPherson setup.
Oh, it is? Okay. Well, what I like about it is this thing sticks without being harsh. A lot of cars are really, really stiff, and this is not stiff, actually. It's got a really good compliant ride. This one has the 20-inch wheels with 235 front, 265 rear. Mm-hmm. This one does not have ceramics. It has the street steel 4-piston 330mm brakes, which are standard on the S, right? Standard on the S, yeah.
So the brakes are have been upgraded on this car compared to the previous generation. The standard 718 Cayman and Boxster with the 2-liter engine, 300 horsepower engine. They get the brakes from the previous 981 S models.
And then this is the brakes off the Carrera.
Right, it has the Carrera's front 4-piston caliper. So certainly enough stopping power.
Yeah, I know in Portugal I had the car with ceramics on it, and they were great, and I had no complaints about the ceramics. But now that I drive the car with the steel brakes, unless, I mean, you probably know if you need ceramics or not, but you could easily not get them. The brake feel on the steel stuff is fine, and it's easy to modulate. The pedal feels good. You could easily save yourself $7 or $8 grand by skipping ceramics, and you wouldn't be missing a whole lot, frankly.
Right, and it really depends on what you're referring to. What are you going to do with the car?
Yeah,
and that's the nice thing about the options availability, is that you can really build the car around your personal needs in terms of the suspension, in terms of the wheels, in terms of the brakes, in terms of the transmission.
This one, like, the only thing I will say about ceramics is, I think based on the values of used cars, you probably get 50% of their value back when you sell the car, right? A ceramic equipped car might sell for $3 or $4 grand more than one without it on the used market.
Right, and they are, we're talking about I think the third generation of ceramics since we introduced them back on the GT2 and the 996 Turbo, and the Carrera GT then. But the wear on them, outside of a damage, say if you spin off at the track,
right,
gravel them up. But we do some of our programs that you've been on. We've been to tracks and run the cars there for an extended amount of time, and the pad wear on those cars,
they last a really long time.
I've had press cars that have been on a launch, and then they've been at several magazines that have done extensive performance testing, and I've never changed the pads on those cars.
Never.
And it's
as compared to every couple thousand miles with press driving. With
the steel rotor, you might have a situation where the pad isn't completely worn, but for safety reasons, given a test that's happening, you want to replace it with the ceramics. That just hasn't been, from what I've seen, hasn't been necessary.
Just like the Boxster, the inputs are really good. The seating position is perfect. This has the GT steering wheel, which is 15 millimeters smaller than the other steering wheel. I've actually never driven one with the regular steering wheel, so I couldn't tell you the difference, but I'd imagine you get the impression of slightly quicker steering, which happens with a smaller wheel. Right. This also has the 911 Turbo rack now, which is quicker, 10% quicker than before.
Yeah.
What else is going on with this thing? What I really do like about it is it's practical. 2 trunks, I can fit my one-take case, which is a Pelican 1610 up front. Yeah. That's really nice. It's a big trunk up there. This one, the base was $66. This one's not cheap. This is an $87,000 car, but it has basically every performance option you can get, other than ceramics.
Plus a full leather interior,
extended
with the
leather
dash and the doors and the stitching.
So they get up there, but some of the stuff you might not need. I would have manual PASM, sport exhaust, sport seats, and I could leave off a lot of the other stuff and be perfectly happy.
Maybe 19s or 20s.
Yeah, and some wheels, and I'd be perfectly happy.
I think one of the things to mention, we were talking about the compliance of the ride earlier. On the previous car, the suspension with the 20 millimeter drop in ride height compared to the standard suspension was a regular suspension without adaptive dampers.
Right.
So now you have
a fully adaptive
the ride
damper
height and the center of gravity of that previous suspension, but the adaptive dampers give you a lot more compliance, and that's not just important on a road, as you know, on a track.
On a track. I mean, when you're slamming curbs, when you're really going for it, you want that responsive suspension for sure, and you want the variability of it. And then they recalibrated the sport mode. So sport mode allows you to have some yaw angle now, and you can push the car without having to go full off.
Right. So what they've done is they've separated the stability control settings from the other settings of the car. Previously, the stability control was such that if you put it in sport mode or sport plus, the system gave you a little more angle.
Right.
And then to really exploit it,
you have to go off.
You turn it off. And we didn't want our engineers, and I think Daniel explained it in the presentation, they wanted to create a situation where the customer can extract, like on a track, for example, on a closed road, more out of the car without having to turn the system all the way off. So you still have that safety net of stability when you need it.
A lot of the more advanced cars are doing that. They're programming in. Ferrari does it, for instance. They allow you to get some slip, which is good, because you want to be able to play, but you want to know that there is kind of something there if it gets a little hairy. What else can I talk about with that? He was just like in my lane right there. I don't know what he's doing, but
I think that maybe he's talking to himself.
Probably. Regarding power, maybe the 4-cylinder doesn't sound quite as, let's call it, musical as the old engine did. Oh, we've hit the end. We'll flip around. Check out the turning radius. This car has an excellent turning radius. I can do it right here. Hi guys, we'll be back. We'll be back. Hang on. Turning radius test. Look at this. Boom. And there's no rear steer in this car, so it's got a really good turning radius. So let's talk power. The engine makes 350, 310, revs to 7,500 RPM, okay?
Right.
So you lose 300 RPM off the top end from the 6, but when they showed us the dyno chart earlier, and I think I have that graphic, I think I'll put it in there, the area under the curve, especially in the lower half of the power band, there is so much more real estate under there. So even though you lose a little bit at the top end, you gain a much wider power band that starts, what's peak torque, like 20, it's down low.
It's 1900.
1900 RPM peak torque. So, and then peak horsepower is at 7,000. So you've got a 5,000 RPM wide power band to play with, which really means you can shift less, you don't have to work as hard, you can use more of the motor.
Right. But I think what's also interesting is that you still can if you want to.
Right.
The one thing the engineers told me is that 6,500 RPM is where it makes the 350.
Right.
But you can rev it to 75. Now, the power drop-off between those two ranges...
Oh, it's like 4%
it's like
or something,
4 or 5%.
right? Yeah.
So, and you notice that when you wind it out, that
Right.
it's still... And that was very important to them to have an engine where it's still rewarding to do that, because that's a characteristic of a
I love
classic.
Texas. Look at this kind gentleman. Thank you, sir. I love this state. Everyone's so nice here. I agree. Yeah, you can wind it all the way. You don't have, a lot of the turbo motors, they die up top. This one does not die up top. You can wind it out.
Right.
And so after I did the Boxster in Portugal, I went actually to Texas and I drove the Cayman GT4 with the 6. And as great as the Cayman GT4 is, and it is great, the whole time I was driving it, I was going, it would make this better, the 4-cylinder engine, because the 6 feels, it almost feels like this old school turret where it's waiting, and then you have power way up top.
And that's, the G2 to the GT name, that's really more of a track-focused, track-spirited car where, on the track, or when you're driving harder, you're operating the car in the upper ranges where you don't notice, you're not really using the torque down low as much. But
on this kind of road here, this is where you've got tight hairpins that you've got to pull out of. Like this tight hairpin right here, the shove from 3,000 right there is so big compared to before.
Yeah.
A lot of people, a lot of the reviews that came out initially of the Boxster and stuff, people didn't like the sound, and I get that, and people were complaining about it and whatnot, but I'm maintaining my position. In the Boxster video, I said I kind of like the sound, especially up top, and in this car I do too. This car it's quieter in here. It's definitely more refined because of the hard roof and all that, but there it is. Up top it sounds really good. You get just a little bit of whistle, tiny bit. This thing rips. Oh, I like it. I like it very much, Frank. It's easy, really easy to get everything out of it.
It's got a fluidity to it, and that's really important when you're going down a road at your own personal brisk pace.
It really, it's such a finely engineered thing, and when you hear the engineers in the presentation talk about, we had to do this, they really explore a lot of different options. It has an integrated dry sump, and the oil system is different. It has a new oil pump. It has a new fuel pump, a new oil pan, and then they show you the engine, and they put all the metal heavy pieces are on the bottom, and all the light plastic pieces are on the top to really get that center of gravity down low. God, that RV must be fun on this road, huh? And you end up with a car that is light and nimble and really a high level of performance, but that doesn't have to be overly stiff or overly rough in order to get there. This thing runs a 742 at the Nürburgring.
Yeah.
That's 1 second off the GT4. Two seconds off, but it doesn't get the GT4's tires.
Right.
If you put the GT4's tires on this, it'll probably beat the GT4.
It's possible. And you've been to the ring, obviously, and you know that there's a lot of uphill uphill sections where torque wins the race.
Right.
And it mirrors what you're experiencing on this road with the car right now. The torque just gives a lot of the time that car has gained over the predecessor. It's 13 seconds faster than the old Cayman S.
That time comes from pulling out of tighter corners.
I would say about half of that time is made through pulling out of the corners and going up those long uphill sections with more authority.
Yeah.
The other time is made by the new adaptive sport suspension and the new tires.
Oh, because this does have wider tires than before, right? It's got like 10.5 wheels.
Wider tires, but it has the respective wheel compared to the predecessor is a half-inch wider.
Okay.
So in that changes how the tire sits on the rim. Because the tire size stayed the same, so the tire can move better on the rim.
Interesting.
And also the tire generation itself is new. This car is on the new N1 generation. Porsche spec tires are always designated by an N marking.
Right, yeah.
And this is the N1 generation Pirelli P0. And one of the things...
It goes 0, 1, 2, right?
And so forth. And I think one of the things that Daniel might have also mentioned in the presentation is that one of the focuses with this new generation of tires for the car is thermal management. And it's interesting to hear the word thermal management usually referring to a cooling system, but we're talking about tires, about how the heat in the tire builds up and how the heat in the tire is maintained over the course of some lapping, so that it stays fairly consistent.
Yeah.
It's something that they looked at when they designed this car.
It's interesting. So I got to wind this up. We're crossing the 15-minute here, so I'm going to wrap this up. The long and short of it is this. If you're looking to spend the kind of budget on a new car, you're really looking at Boxster Cayman, Corvette, maybe M3, but this is still the finesse car. It doesn't have the brute force that a Vette does. It doesn't have the practicality because of the lack of a rear seat that the M3 does. And it's the finesse car. It really does emphasize steering, braking, chassis control, inputs, stuff like that. Okay, maybe doesn't sound quite as good as the old car, but like that's the price of progress, right? It's just the government says we need to get more efficient. The people say we need more horsepower, and turbos. That's how you do it at that level.
Well, and I think the kind of performance you're experiencing wouldn't have been possible with a naturally aspirated engine.
Or it would have cost so much money, if you could build some crazy 4-liter thing, but that's like a $60,000 engine. I know the tuner guys who build those engines, and they're really expensive engines.
Yeah.
And so if you want to get the power up, the emissions down, the fuel efficiency to be the same or better, at a reasonable price, that's just what happens.
And in the competitive set, you're talking about a 350 horsepower 4-cylinder car, but this is a low 4s with a 4.4 to 60 with the manual, 4 flat with the PDK.
No, it's fast. It's fast.
177 miles an hour top track speed, and probably with the PDK, a mid 12, low 12 quarter.
Yeah. No, it's
and that's
quick.
Our numbers. That's uncorrected. No.
You guys do pretty conservative numbers.
We do.
The magazines usually beat Porsche's numbers.
They usually beat the times.
But,
so.
Look, I really like the car. I liked the Boxster, and just because Frank is here, if you go back and watch the Boxster video, I'm basically saying the same stuff. Nothing's really changed. I love the Cayman. I could probably daily one of these without any trouble at all, and it's a great car. So thanks to Porsche for having me down in Texas, and Frank for coming along and filling in info, and thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you later.